Welcome everybody, this is SharePoint Patterns and Practices webcast, and this time we're going to talk about how can you reuse your existing JavaScript libraries with SharePoint Framework. And in practice this means how can you reuse your existing investments on JavaScript which you actually have done before we from Microsoft introduced the SharePoint Framework. So how can you use those within the context of client-side web parts and also with other elements which are coming as part of the SharePoint Framework in the future. My name is Vesa Juvonen. I'm a Senior Program Manager from SharePoint Engineering, and with me is Waldek Mastercards. So Waldek, will you do the intros?
Sure. Hi everybody, my name is Waldek Mastercards. I'm Office Development MVP. I work as a Senior Developer at Rencor, and today I'll be your dev guy.
And this time you'll be the dev guy. Let's see what you will be next time. So, but anyway, so let's concentrate on the presentation. So first thing, what we always do with this webcast, just to clarify, SharePoint Patterns and Practices is owned and coordinated by the SharePoint Engineering from Redmond, which I'm part of as well. But we work together with community. So what we want to do is build a community around sharing your samples and sharing your learnings between the other people in the community, so that everybody else can benefit and will benefit out of the common knowledge of the community. The PnP provides code samples, guidance documentation, monthly and actually bi-weekly community calls. There's case studies. The themes are in the SharePoint Framework, and that's still in preview when we're actually recording this webcast. And then the in-production stuff around SharePoint adding model. So how to do remote customizations in SharePoint using data model techniques. Also Microsoft Graph, Office 365 APIs in general are touched by our guidance, and remote provisioning and client-side development in general. AKMS SharePoint PnP is the one URL to find more information around the SharePoint PnP. Good. Let's actually get going on today's topic. So, what are the options for me to use external libraries in a SharePoint Framework solutions? And obviously at the time when we recorded this, the only option available is the client-side web parts, but there's other alternatives coming in the future as well. We basically have three different options to use existing JavaScript. So you're able to reference external JavaScripts from a URL, like you would be in a classic JavaScript implementation as well, or plain JavaScript implementation as well. You can absolutely include JavaScript files as part of your SPFX solution, and technically you don't actually need to even, well, it slightly depends on your JavaScript implementation. Do you need to adjust them or change them before you start using them within the SPFX solution? Or then, depending again on the package, if the JavaScript is available or the library is available from NPM, you would reference that from the NPM as a package, and then you start using that within the TypeScript and within the SPFX implementation. Those are pretty much the three different options, right, Waldek?
Yeah, and I guess that we didn't actually include the most important part here, which is you don't have to rewrite everything to TypeScript, right?
True.
You can absolutely reuse what you already have and build on top of that. And if you will, as you go, you can upgrade that to TypeScript, to modules, to everything else. But actually the key point is you don't need to rewrite the scripts that you already built. You can reuse them, you can embed them and reference them, and actually include them in your new web parts that you build on SPFX.
Yes, absolutely. And that was actually on the following slide. But you did forget about that, Waldek. But anyway, really, if you think about the considerations, those three options which we presented in a previous slide are the options how do I use the JavaScript libraries. And then if you think about those things, like Waldek mentioned, you can use plain JavaScript directly in TypeScript. You don't have to adjust your existing JavaScript if you don't want to. You might need to do some modifications in your script and markup to support modular access, so you can more easily execute stuff from those JavaScript libraries which do exist. And this essentially means that you can easily reuse your existing investments in plain JavaScript, which means that if you do some implementation right now which isn't using the let's say modern web stack development ways using NPM, you're just writing a JavaScript directly on JS files, else. That's not waste of time. You can adjust that to be then available for SPFX customizations in the future. Pretty much exactly what you Waldek said, right?
Yeah. And then the point that I tried to make was more that no matter if your existing scripts are on NPM or you embed them or you reference them from a URL, you can reuse them exactly as we say here, that when you choose to not have your scripts available on the internet and you include them in project, you might need to adjust some things, but actually the biggest part of the code you will be able to reuse, right? So actually the reuse part applies both to scripts that you include in projects as well to the same script that you would reference from either a URL or NPM.
Yep. Absolutely makes sense. But now we kind of are told that you need to adjust some of the scripts and you need to consider some of the things. So let's actually have a live demo on that one. So how do I actually reuse how do I reuse my existing investments on plain JavaScript in the SharePoint framework? So how do I actually take all of that existing goodies into use and what I need to consider? And let's actually give Waldek again the stage for doing the live demo on this one. So Waldek, take it away.
All right. So to illustrate how you can reuse existing investments that you might have done in the past in SPFX, we have built a really simplistic client-side customization that we included here on a page. So here you see it. It is a button, and when we click it, it shows a greeting like "How are you doing?"
How you doing?
How are you doing?
How you doing?
So the way it's built is that if we edit the page, you will see a script editor web part, and if we edit that, you will be able to see the exact code that we embedded on a page. So if we edit the snippet, we see a reference to a script and then some HTML. So let me grab that already to clipboard for later. And then let me stop editing the page. Discard changes. I haven't changed anything. Let me stop editing the page again. Because apparently you have to do it twice. So here's the script that we referenced, and it only shows, so it only has a function that shows an alert. So we have all of that on a page.
Yeah. So quickly on this one, this is a relatively typical scenario right now in a SharePoint Online or in on-premises where people are using the script editor web part. But just as well, the script itself could actually come outside of SharePoint as well, obviously. So
absolutely. So actually, the point here is that you have some HTML that you embed on a page, which creates the elements in which you inject the content, right? And then you load script, either which is stored in your site, or it can be stored on the internet, or it can be actually both, right? Because you could use jQuery knockout with your own script that you have internally, and to put them together on a page to show some cool stuff, right?
Yep.
So we have this. So how would you go around that and migrate that to a SharePoint Framework client-side web part? So I've already created a project, which is new SharePoint Framework project based on the drop 5 as recorded, and I've already added that script to project. Now, if I go to web part, let me start with replacing the HTML with the HTML that I just grabbed from the page, and if we run this, let's see what happens if we try to run this. So here I go to command line, and let me zoom in on that. And here we run.
Yeah.
It's still pretty small. Is it like this? Better?
Much better.
There you go. So here we say gulp serve. And so now Webpack will actually build the project, bundle it, combine all of that, and we'll create a bundle in 3, 2, 1.
Whenever it's actually doing that, there we go.
Yeah, there you go. It took a bit to start, but once it's started, it's going good. And now you can see actually that we get 2 warnings about styles that we still have in WebPart, but because I replaced the HTML, I actually don't use CSS anymore, right? So I just got rid of all of that, and we're almost done there. Yes, we are done. Let me go back to browser, and let me now open the Workbench, where I can do from HTTPS localhost 5432 Workbench. So there it is. Let me zoom in on that a bit, and let me open console, because that's important for us to see as well. Let me clear it. Let me try to add the web part. So there is a button, and when we try to click that, as you can see here, we will get an error, right? So the function that we are trying to call is not available, right?
Makes
total sense.
You
might say.
Yeah.
Yes, because the one thing that I didn't do is, so here I have the script in project, but I actually don't use that yet in WebPart. So the easiest way for me to include it is to type here require, and here I can say .dash, which is a current directory, and then my dash script, right? And I don't need to add the JS extension here. All of that is being done for me. So let me save that. Let me go back to command line so that I can see that the project is being rebuilt and refreshed. And the page is being refreshed as well. If I go back to the Workbench now, we should be good to go. And when I click that, we still get error, right? And that has to do with the fact with how external scripts that you add to project are being actually embedded. So if you look at how do we call the function in code, we actually only specified its name. And with that, we assume that it's available in the global scope on a page. If we go back to our original script that we have built here, if I open the command line and I go to console, let me clear all of that, and here I will type window greeting, then you can see that greeting, there you go. So there you can see that the function is exposed to the whole page. Any element on the page can access it. Now, if we try to do exactly the same in the web part that we have built, you will see that the function isn't there. So greeting, enter, it's undefined. So let's first check that the script that we actually use is actually embedded in the bundle. So for that, we go back to project. We go to the dist folder. We open the greeting bundle.js. We scroll almost all the way down. And here you can see our script that is embedded, right? So the function is embedded. But if you have a look at how it is embedded, you actually see that it's embedded in a function. So with that, the variable that we have is apparently or suddenly it's no longer exposed on window, the global scope, but it's now a local variable in a function. And this is exactly why we cannot access it directly the way we did in the past, right? So typically that will be the point that you have to expose some of that script externally. And when you do that, you have to keep in mind these two arguments that we have available here, module and exports, right? So let's try to first expose the function that we have here in WebPart. So we go back to our script and we change it, or we actually extend it with module.exports, and here we assign an object to it, and we say greeting is greeting. And with that instruction, we actually choose which element of our script we want to make available outside of the script, in our case to WebPart. So here, for example, we could have another variable, a equals 1, and that a wouldn't be available outside of this script. If we wanted to make it available as well, we could here add it as a equals a, or we could even say b is a, right? So we can pick any name we want here on the left-hand side and assign any objects that we have in our script to make that available outside of the script. So with that, if we go back to WebPart, right? We include the script here on a page, but we actually have to do more, right? Because if we just embed it, then we will still have the function that is exposed, but we don't really use it. So here we can read it by saying const, and then we call it my script, and we don't have any types for it, so we just use any, and now we have a reference to any objects that we expose here. So let me just grab it to the right-hand side. So here, now we have a reference to everything that we expose here, basically this object. So what we can do now is say we have to change this, right? Because we cannot assign the function that we have inline here. So instead, let's change that to this DOM element, because now we have to get a reference of this input. So we can do it by saying query selector, we can get input, and to that we will add a event listener to the event click, and we will assign it to greeting, to my script, greeting, because that's the name that we have here. So let's just save this and wait for a moment for the project to rebuild. And if we did everything right, we should be able now to see the script actually work the way it worked in the past. So the page is refreshed already, reloaded, and then when we now click it, there you see. There it is. So now our script works the way it works exactly in the past. So the key thing is that if you have a legacy script, a plain JavaScript script, it's being embedded in function. It's being embedded, it's being wrapped. And you have to choose yourself which pieces of it you want to be available externally, and you do it with this construct. So here
Yeah, so just kind of elaborate. Obviously, you're just about to finalize that point, which is where we used to export, and then we're exporting that function to be available. Really, when you think of it, just oversimplifying again things, create clarification why it isn't exposed. And if we go back on the SharePoint, the classic script editor web part thingy, and it's actually really important to realize that the greetings in here was in a global level,
yes.
Which means that what if you would have two of those script editor web parts with the same greeting definition? You would actually have a collision.
So if they were exactly the same, you wouldn't see any issues, right? Because they would be exactly the same.
Exactly the same. Yes, exactly.
But
if they would be exactly the same.
The point is, if they were not the same, so if you would have two functions called exactly the same, but they would do another thing.
Yes.
Well, in that case, you would only see working the one that's added to the page as last. It would basically override any other function with the same name, or actually function or any object with the same name defined previously.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this way we actually bring, let's say, isolation based on the instance of the web part, and that's really one of the well, there's one of the many benefits of using SharePoint Framework comparing the script editor web part, because that's a classic scenario, and people are asking, hey, what's the advantages of using this? Well, you actually get this proper isolation. You're able to build in a more mature way this customization. So it's not just embedding JavaScript on the page using script editor web part, where you don't actually know what else the other people are doing. So this way you can guarantee that the script is exposed only for your web part, and you can actually rely on that. So really great clarification.
Yeah, and the key point is that we haven't changed anything about the original script. So it still works exactly the same. It worked. The only bit that we added was the part that exposes the functions that we want to use inside the web parts as an external piece. That's the only thing that we had to really change, right? And also the way we assign events, right? Because here we don't have there's no way for us to do that directly in line. So with that, we can get first reference to our external object, to our exposed objects, and then we can use that to assign them as events handlers to elements on in web part.
Yeah, but that's just classic SharePoint JavaScript almost. So it's nothing really that special. So that's easily
Absolutely. So with that, how about we go to the slides and we wrap it up?
Sounds good. Good. And that pretty much sums up this webcast. So we went through we kind of mentioned the individual options of referencing external JavaScript. We didn't really concentrate on that one in the demo. In the demo, we more concentrated on what if you have your existing investments on JavaScript. We do have an alternative webcast or another webcast where we then reference a jQuery files from the URL or npm packages and what does it actually mean. So in this one, we wanted to concentrate more on existing JavaScript customization, what you have, and how can you actually reuse them within the SharePoint Framework customizations. Anything you want to add, Waldek, on the demo and what we went through?
Yeah, sure. So I would stress that you should keep in mind that you don't need to rewrite the scripts that you already have in order for them to work with SPFX. They work. You might need to change a thing or two, but actually the biggest part of the code will still work just as it used to work in the past. So keep that in mind as you explore the new framework and web parts.
And that's a really, really great reminder, because I think there has been some people who freaked out by the fact that, hey, why are you introducing this TypeScript complexity on the JavaScript? And there's multiple reasons why we do that, and let's actually drill down on those. But TypeScript always compiles the JavaScript, and the whole point is that everything is JavaScript in the end. So whenever the client-side web part is executed, everything is still JavaScript, and that it's really important to realize that if you have existing JavaScript functionalities, you can use them as such within your customizations. In the end, from a browser perspective, hey, everything is JavaScript, like mentioned. But
absolutely,
I think that pretty much sums up the webcast. So thank you for watching, and we'll come up with a new one sooner or later. Thank you.
Bye.